From my childhood, I have been number one in everything. In studies, from history and geography, to music and fine arts, I had always ranked first in all subjects. In sports, from fencing and shooting to equestrian and tennis, I had never met my match. I was even proficient in cultural essences of various countries, such as tea ceremony, flower arrangement, and gentleman etiquette. Besides these inherent talents, my face was so delicate and handsome that it seemed to be made by Michelangelo, and I could easily have a bunch of fangirls adoring me. The only shortcoming was my height. No matter how much milk I had forced myself to drink, there had been no improvement. However, as Grandpa said, a little body often harbors a great soul. This disadvantage didn't stand in my way at this famous boys' high school. However, my perfect plan to dominate the campus was unexpectedly hindered a week after entrance. A mysterious boy became my roommate in the middle of the course. No one knew why he came a week later, and we were all curious about how he could still enter the school as normal without attending the opening ceremony. According to regulations, if students missed the opening ceremony, they would lose their qualifications to be a student of the school. However, after a week, the boy who hadn't even put on his uniform was led into the classroom by the class teacher.
Starting today, he will be your classmate. And Arthur, he will be your roommate, so can you show him around the campus after class?
Of course, teacher. I agreed with no hesitation and showed a sweet smile to the new student that no one could resist. But he just nodded slightly and didn't reveal any excitement over being greeted by me. Well, maybe he was not good at talking, so I chose to forgive him. After the bell rang, he was immediately surrounded by the crowds of students. I thought he would be shy and embarrassed and would ask for my help. After all, I was assigned by the teacher to be his guide. But I didn't expect him to answer the students' questions in such a natural way.
What's your name?
Lucien.
Where do you come from?
China.
Are you a noble there?
There's no class division in modern China.
Then what does your family do?
I don't have a family.
The students thought he was just joking and continued to ask,
Why? Everyone has a family. I'm an orphan.
He gave a shocking answer with an expressionless face, and the crowds began to whisper. The boys here were either rich or noble, so his identity would surely raise rumors. Although he seemed not to care about this, I didn't like to hear the gossip. I broke into the crowd and led him out the classroom. He followed me silently all the way, and he was so quiet that I could hardly feel his existence. Hey, why did you tell them? It's okay not to answer.
Because they asked, and I didn't think I needed to hide anything.
When he said this, I could see the sincerity in his eyes. It seemed that he didn't mean to please the students with a joke. You should know what can be said and what cannot. I sighed, unable to understand his way of thinking. Sometimes, silence is a virtue.
But honesty is also one.
He looked genial and elegant, but he made his utmost efforts to fight for his point of view at such a time. I thought I probably couldn't get along with him. After walking speechlessly all the way to the dorm, I was embarrassed to find that I couldn't open the door. He stood behind me and watched for a while. Finally, he reached for the keychain in my hand.
You are using the wrong key.
His hands were slightly larger than mine, and his fingers were long and strong, like the hands of an excellent pianist. I looked up at him slightly and realized he was taller than I was.
Done.
He walked straight into the room after returning the key to me. When he realized that I was still standing there, he turned to me and asked,
Why are you staring at me? Is there anything on my face?
No. I awkwardly looked away and changed the topic. I just didn't notice you were so tall.
My height is average.
He looked directly into my eyes, which was the first time he had ever looked straight at me since we met.
To be honest, I think it's because you're petite.
This was the first day we met. It had been horrible from beginning to end. From that day on, everybody started to shun him, as I expected. He didn't care much about it. Every day, he just shuttled around the dorm, school building, and library with books in his arms, alone. At first, I thought he was always studying till midnight because he was always behind in his studies. Every day after I fell asleep, he was still writing swiftly, and when I woke up, he was already sitting at the desk. He was like an untiring perpetual motion machine, and I even wondered if he was a sleepless humanoid. But one day, I accidentally passed his desk. I couldn't restrain my curiosity and peeked at it. Then I realized what he usually read in the dorm was not the content of our textbooks at all. After that, I went to look up the names of those advanced subjects, which turned out to be college courses. Although he had previewed many courses in advance, he was never absent in class and sat upright while listening and taking notes. But when it came to PE classes, especially basketball, rugby, and other sports requiring teamwork, he was always absent for a variety of reasons. Even though he didn't come onto the court, he would still sit by and watch everybody. I didn't know what was interesting about watching boys sweat like this, but he seemed to enjoy it. He tried to be invisible all the time, making people forget about his existence. But if you paid attention, you would find that he had always been there. He watched us silently, being neither too close nor too distant. He was like a drop of oil dripping on the water, which gave me a subtle sense of strangeness. I'd been waiting for an opportunity to compete with him. After waiting for nearly a month, the fearsome surprise test finally arrived. I naturally won the first place in every subject with ease, and he was in the top 5, which was neither noticeable nor too bad. To be honest, I was a little disappointed. I thought he should be able to surpass me in 1 or 2 subjects. After all, he had already previewed senior courses himself. But in the end, it turned out that he was not as mysterious and intelligent as he seemed to be, but was just a little too anxious to learn. After that, I stopped paying attention to him until I met him in the elective tea ceremony. The elective had high credits, but not everyone could choose it, because it wasn't the student who chose the teacher, but the teacher who chose the students. To obtain the qualification to attend, we had to take many tests. But the teacher, known for his strictness, praised Lucien in class so that all the students remembered his name that first day. This completely ignited my curiosity and competitiveness. I hardly listened to the teacher in that class. After class, I rushed out of the classroom and blocked him in the corridor. "Lucien, compete with me!"
No.
He bypassed me without lifting his eyes. The crowd began to talk, occasionally with a few sneers. My face was burning. I couldn't help but call after him in anger. "Does Mr. William think so highly of you just because of your gloomy face?" As soon as the words came out, the crowd started buzzing. At last, he stopped his steady footsteps and turned around. Although he was calm and poker-faced, I could obviously feel a strong sense of oppression.
I'll give you a reason.
As we returned to the empty tea ceremony classroom, he locked the door to block the students who wanted to look on.
May I?
Before I could respond, he took the initiative, which was rare to see. Seeing me nod, he set about in a skillful way. Without saying a word, he poured boiling water into the pot and quickly poured it out. In the blink of an eye, he had completed the first step of the tea ceremony. Brewing, sealing the pot, his actions were as smooth as flowing water. It was real art. While I was still in awe, he had stood up and stepped aside.
It's your turn.
I was too ashamed to show off in front of him. I had to lower my head and admit my failure. No need. I lost. He clearly prevailed over me, but instead of showing off in public, He just hid his strength. To me, such behavior was simply contempt for God's gift. Why do you never show your strength?
I didn't hide it on purpose.
While speaking, he tidied the things up as if we were talking about something unimportant.
Usually I show the strength Lucien should have as a student, but what you see now is the strength Lucien should have as himself.
Why do you do this?
I don't think that's something you need to know. Everyone has his own mission, but not everyone can understand what others are going to achieve.
When he said this, his look remained unruffled, but his tone revealed a trace of forbearance. Answer my question. No one had ever mystified me deliberately like him. I saw through the faint smile on his face. It was clear that I was treated as a child who had seen little of the world.
I remember you once said that silence is a virtue, and I think I understand that now.
He turned around to leave, but suddenly stopped before opening the door.
You are too impetuous. If you calm down and rely on your own perception to get close to and understand the tea ceremony, you will know it better.
I wanted to catch up with him and ask him thoroughly, but the crowd of onlookers blocked my way. When I finally managed to break away, he had disappeared in the corridor. My mysterious roommate left quietly after the first school year. Before he left, he finally decided to stop hiding his strength and accomplished a feat, ranking above me in all subjects. In addition to expressing shock, the students in the class didn't forget to give me a dig. I ate 5 whole scones to dispel my anger and depression. I thought he left in such a hurry because he worried this would irritate me, and he might have concealed his strength before in order to avoid embarrassing me. For his precious consideration, I decided to forgive him once more for leaving without saying goodbye. Of course, I didn't forget that I had to take the first place in everything, so I made an oath on the day when the exam results were announced that I would compete with him once more. However, I saw his articles published in the world's top scientific journals when I was still struggling for my dissertation in college. Of course, this was what happened later.